Welcome in, everyone, to a live episode of the Hawks Eye podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Coots, and I know I've been kind of away for a bit, had to recoup after that Super Bowl victory, had to kind of just take a breather and enjoy it for a bit, but now I'm back. The content's going to be rolling again frequently, and today we are so lucky to have guest Curtis Allen from the Seahawks Draft Blog joining me today. We are going to do a massive deep dive into Seattle's salary cap situation. What's going on with Tank Lawrence? Is he going to retire? Is he not? What can Seattle do to maybe restructure some of these deals? How much real money are they going to have to spend in free agency this offseason with the looming contract extensions for Devin Witherspoon and Jackson Smith and Jigba on the horizon? So Curtis is going to come in. He's going to help me break all of that down. But as always, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, click that notification button. It helps out the channel. We will be doing a live Q&A towards the end of the show tonight, so make sure you get your super chats in, as they will always get priority in the chat. But with that being said and all that taken out of the way, we're going to talk to Curtis right after this.
That's all we do, baby. It's our time.
Seattle defense continues to expedite their sixth sack.
First and 10 at the Seattle 44. Here comes the blitz. May. Kennedy tries to throw. Ball comes out. Going the other way. Turning up the field. It's Shannon through. And he scores. Touchdown. Play faking in. Sanders going to roll left. Looking. Sam throws. Back in the end zone. Is it caught? He's out it in. Touchdown. Seahawks.
We did not care. It's about us. It's always been about us and what we do. And now we're going to the Super Bowl.
All right, let's bring in our guest here, Curtis Allen, joining the show today. Curtis, how are you doing coming off of that Super Bowl victory, and how have you been so far, friend?
Well, let me tell you, that intro you just ran gave me goosebumps. All the we did not
Excellent
care
success.
the confetti. Yeah, you got me. Yeah. It feels like it's kind of been a dream year where everything has come together, and the players have such an uncommon bond that you don't find in NFL football or even other brands of football so much. So we're very fortunate the way everything came together. And I think most of us, the consensus was next year was the year. They were really going to put it together next year and get a defense going, and then, give the offense a little bit of time and that sort of thing. But no, it came together beautifully. And it just, I don't know. I just don't know if I could realistically write up a better season, just myself out of my mind. So it was a real treat, and it's a once in a lifetime thing. And the best part is there's room for more. There's room for growth.
And that's the key thing. Like you said, this team really feels like they're a year ahead. This feels like, to me, if the 2012 Seahawks team that lost to Atlanta had won that Super Bowl. That's what it feels like, is that we won the Super Bowl this year. And now John Schneider and Mike McDonald and this whole young core nucleus are really all capable of staying together for another season and another season of growth for these guys. So it's going to be really interesting. But Curtis, the one thing, that you're better at it than anybody I know in the Seahawks content creation is the salary cap. You are a wizard with it. You understand the inner workings. And so with that being said, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this first part. Like, how does the salary cap break down for Seattle? Where do they actually stand? How much money do they really have to play with, especially with Devin Witherspoon and JSN contract extensions coming up here? And it sounds like they want to get them done this offseason.
Yeah. Bryce, they're in fantastic shape. It's almost like I said about the way the team came together this last season, winning the Super Bowl. If I could draw up a scenario where you come off a Super Bowl and you have flexibility and options and money and cap space. It would be almost exactly where we are right now. So they're in a very good place. One of the things that I've kind of preached from the rooftops a little bit is the last 2 years, 24 and 25, they've taken on an incredible amount of dead cap space. So Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Quandre Diggs, Tyler Lockett, Jamal Adams, those type of players they moved on from. And it's important to note that dead cap is hard. It's not easy to swallow. Fans don't like, okay, we spent this much money and we're getting absolutely nothing out of it. But now we get to see the benefits of what's happening from moving on from that dead cap. So if everybody that I just mentioned had stayed, we'd be over the cap right now by $30 million and trying to figure out where to cut. And if we're being honest, Bryce, we'd probably be coming off another 9-8 season. So it's the combination of being able to get young, inexpensive talent, sign some new players to contracts that graduate up like we always try and do, start low and move up, has left them with a ton of flexibility for this offseason. So over the cap just came up with the NFL came up with their final number, $301.2 million this year. So right now on over the cap, the Seahawks have $59 million in cap room, $56 million in effective cap space. So I look ahead. So I just to get a balance of where we are, about $10 million needs to go to the practice squad, needs to go to just keeping some money in the bank for injured reserve players that go on injury. And then I kind of throw another 10 million in there because John Schneider will, I can almost guarantee, make another trade about week 6 or week 7 that will completely energize the team and find a whole new element to add to the team. And so they'll need a little cap money to do that. So right now they're looking at $36 to $40 million worth of cap space, but they have a ton of options to restructure, extend, cut even, and get some more cap space if they really need to. And it does sound like with what we're talking about, all signs are, even though they're selling the franchise this year, it's up for sale. They're not going to be slowing down on their cash expenditures. And John Schneider has said multiple times that he's had conversations with Jody Allen about, let's go, just load it up. And no, we're not going to cut way back just because we're selling the franchise. So, and that's smart. There's really no reason to stop at this point. If you just look at where the franchise is right now, you've got a lease on Lumen Field till 2031, 2032. If the reports are to be believed, you've got John Schneider for 5 more years on his contract. You've got the best young coach in football right now with 4 more years on his contract. And you've got a lot of players that are under 30 that maybe haven't peaked yet. So there's really no reason to kind of strip this thing for parts, kind of like some of the other, new ownership groups have come in and done, like in Carolina, a little bit in Washington with the Commanders and that sort of thing. So, and if it makes you, if it helps, the last time a trust sold a team was Denver in 2022. So in March, what they did in March 2022, they gave up the store for Russell Wilson. They went out on the market. They spent about $50-60 million. And then in the fall, they signed Russell Wilson to a $165 million guaranteed contract. So they did not go and, gut the team and strip everything down like some fans have feared that might be the case. So I'm very positive and very rosy on my outlook about this season. I think they're in wonderful shape at this moment.
Which is kind of an interesting thing for a Super Bowl winning team, right? Usually when you win the Super Bowl, you've kind of generally pushed all your chips into the middle of the table and gone, hey, we're going all in and we'll deal with the repercussions later. Like we look at the Saints after they won their Super Bowl. They started spending on that credit card like crazy. And we're still, I think, the majority of us are trying to figure out how the Saints have been able to operate as a franchise with the amount of dead cap money that they've incurred over the years. There's one thing I did want to ask you about this, Curtis, and you brought it up to me when we were talking before the show about the 90% cash funding rule for these teams and the confusion that's kind of around it. Do you want to like explain that and break it down for the viewers?
Sure. So the collective bargaining agreement has some safeguards in place, so teams don't just not pay their players and just save money and call that profit for themselves. So over a 3-year period, they basically have to spend 90% of the cap. So you can be way under the cap in 1 year, and then you have the next year you have to really make up for it. And so there's basically, if you don't spend the money, the league will take the money and distribute it among your players. So it's punitive, but it's not something that really has to be worried about all that much. They're one of the biggest teams under that needs to spend this year. But that's kind of the result of having so many good young players. I mean, like Ty Okada is making $800,000. I mean, he's making barely practice squad money, and you have other starters that are doing really, really well. So they have a need to spend some money, but right now they're in line to spend about $220 million in cash with what they have on the roster right now. The number they need to spend to reach that threshold is like 266 million. We're all going off of the cap site, so it's a little bit off here and there. But so $46 million is what they need to spend in cash, not in cap space, actual cash this year to meet that threshold. And we'll get into it in a minute, but Rashid Shaheed, Ken Walker, I mean, there's going to be 2/3 of that money is going to be gone in about 5 seconds. I mean, maybe by the end of the broadcast, we'll have somebody signed to a contract on Twitter or something.
Knows? Maybe. So Curtis, with that being said, the way you described that was great. Is this where you see some of these teams when, like you said, they're under the cap 1 year severely, then they've got to make up for it? Is this where you sometimes see teams that necessarily don't have great general managers, great, salary cap divisions, sometimes get themselves in trouble by this is where we see some of those bigger contracts go to players that were kind of like, really, like they overspent that much for that player? Is that sometimes also to help make up for that difference that they have to?
I think so. That's it to a degree. Some franchises are like, this is not our year to spend, and we don't like the talent out there, and there's other organizational principles that are in play, like they're getting a new general manager, or somebody's, the coach is in his last year and they know he's going to retire, sort of thing. So, but it hasn't really happened to a crazy degree for more than a few years. The Raiders, I believe, were one of the teams because they were just so cash poor, because they're a family-owned team. That's where all their family equity is in the team. They don't have like another, Mark Davis isn't like an oil magnate or, a tech billionaire or anything. So he doesn't have that money to spend. And so there was like 2 years where they were really low. And then the third year they were like, you get 10 million and you get 10 million and you get 10 million. But the league kind of knows, like when Deshaun Watson got a $230 million fully guaranteed contract, has anybody got even close to that? Even the best quarterbacks in the NFL, the league kind of knows that, okay, they're stepping out and they're going too far off the ledge there, that they're not going to set a new standard for everybody else.
Yeah, and that's where it's going to get interesting. So, like you said, Curtis, let's kind of talk about what Seattle's situation is and who's priority number one. And so I've got a graphic here that I'll bring up on the screen so we can kind of look at it, and I'll get this out of the way here. But you look at this graphic, and this is off of Spot Rack projections. So again, like you said, Curtis, sometimes they're a little off here or a little over here, but this is kind of what the general consensus seems to be on what the market value is for a lot of Seattle's free agents. So you got Rashid Shaheed there. a 3-year, $24 million deal, $8 million per year, but I think he could get more because of just depending on what that receiver market looks like. Ken Walker there with a 4-year, $56 million. So he's up at that $14 million range, which, listening to the reports coming out of the combine, it sounds like some teams view him at that 10 million, like Seattle. Other teams view him higher than that at 12 and in that range. So he could push that if a team gets into a bidding war. Kobe Bryant's number seems relatively close to what I think he could be, maybe a little higher with incentives. Boye Mafe, I think, might be higher than that. From everything I'm seeing and hearing is that he may have a bigger market than people may have expected. Reek's number seems relatively close to what I think Reek could get out on that market, that 14.5 million per year. Again, the corner market's kind of, not the greatest this year, and in a lot of ways. Josh Jobs there with 3 years, 27 at 9 million a year. And then Josh Jones at the end there is the O lineman, 2 years, 10 million. Seems about right. If you were to pay a swing tackle 5 million per year. Curtis, what do you think of these projections and how accurate do you think they really are?
So starting at the top, I think Rashid Shaheed is probably going to get more. He'll probably ask for more and get that. I'm guessing like a 3-year, $40 million contract, like 13 million or so, in that range. If there could be a potential for him to decide that his market isn't great right now. I went back and looked. He had 22 touches on offense for the Seahawks. 22. So he's never reached more than 5 touchdowns on offense. He's never gotten more than 720 yards on offense. So he could, Brady Henderson floated that, he might try a year or two and establish some value, play for the 2026 Super Bowl champion Seahawks and see how he goes from there. But I think, if he does that, that's good for Seattle because that means they don't have a really big cap hit. But if he wants to, make his money this year, I think it should be more than that. 3 years, maybe 40 million or so, just to account for the explosive opportunities he brings in the return game. And I think we can count on the return game being a part of the NFL football game from now on, if we're being honest. So, which is good. Ken Walker there, 14 million a year. Somebody's really going to have to reach. Somebody's going to be paying the Super Bowl tax, the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl MVP tax for that. I think it's well known around the league that he's not going to be the guy that's like a Saquon Barkley that is going to get mega touches during the year and stay together in one piece. So, I think Kyron Williams is kind of my guideline because they've been very similar players over the last couple of years. Kyron's been less explosive than Walker, but more consistent. But his number is 10 to 11 million a year. So, and everything that we're hearing with Brady and some of the league sources around at the combine is saying that the Seahawks love Ken Walker, but they're saying to him, hey, go out, and if you feel like you want to get one of these top deals, good for you. We'll send you on our way with well wishes. But if you want to come back and play in Seattle, we have to get to a number we're a little bit more comfortable with. So
it's interesting because I think part of that too is this running back class is a very intriguing one because I think it fits what Seattle's offensive philosophy is, even stylistically in a lot of ways. You look at a lot of these backs in this class that you would be able to get. And I think this is where it's interesting for Seattle as a team, Curtis, at the K9, conversation specifically is you have 4 draft picks, but you don't have a lot of holes on your roster right now where you're like, hey, we need to make sure that we're filling this. Like really running back and corner are 2 of your biggest holes right now on this team. Now the edge conversation could get interesting here in a couple of weeks, depending on what Tank Lawrence decides to do. But I think there's a strong conversation to be made. Seattle may be looking at this running back class and going, hey, you know what? If Ken Walker does go to that $12 million range, we might be able to draft a guy. And they still have a couple guys, they brought back Cam Akers and Velus Jones for futures contracts. Jacardier Wright looked pretty good in the preseason. There might be another guy in camp this year that can push a Kenny McIntosh. it could be Seattle could even potentially take 2 running backs this year, potentially in the draft. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's an interesting kind of conversation.
And George Holani's an exclusive rights free agent. So basically they retain his rights for peanuts. So, and he proved that he was back. So yeah, that could be very interesting. You made a good point about the Seahawks. I mean, you think about it on the offense, what do they really have that they need at this moment? They want to get Shaheed back. They'd like to have Walker in the fold, but think about it. They've got all their tight ends, all their other wide receivers. The offensive line is set, for lack of a better term. They could look to upgrade. And of course, you got your quarterback. So for a Super Bowl winning team, they're bringing a lot of people back, especially on offense. So they have a lot of really a lot of opportunity here to make some hay and make some good decisions with things, and they could stand firm on their cap and their cash budget if they really feel like it. There's a player that's just creeping out of their range.
So I'll let you continue there, Curtis. Kobe Bryant, what do you think his market is?
Yeah, it's interesting. Brady Henderson reported that he and the Seahawks had talked this fall, and they were way apart. They were far apart, and so it's curious to know if that's still the case. It's difficult because safeties are fungible. I mean, you can get another safety without too much trouble. And if the combine today is any indication, there'll be some defensive backs available in this draft that could be very good. So 3 years, $15 million. I think that's a little low if somebody's going to go out and pay the Super Bowl tax on that. I think more like 3 years, 25. If somebody's really thinking that they need Kobe Bryant in their lineup, but I don't think he's going to be back with the Seahawks next year. If he gets that kind of money, I can't see the Seahawks agreeing to that kind of a contract. There was some thought that he was trying to get into the range of like Julian Love, which might be just a bridge too far for them.
I think, and that's a fair bridge that is too far. Because don't get me wrong, I love Kobe Bryant. I've been a big advocate since they drafted him. I thought he was a great pick, especially when they decided to finally move him to safety. But what I'll say, what came apparent to me this year with Kobe was the rising of Ty Okada. And I think Ty is a more athletic safety. His scores indicate as well. So is his on-field play. I think he's a better run defender. I will say I think Kobe's a better ball hawk.
Yeah.
But I think you get that in Julian Love anyways. And Ty Okada, I think, again, you could probably sign Ty Okada to a 3-year deal for less than what that's on the screen right now for Kobe, and he'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
And you're still getting a similar level of play at the safety position.
Well, and safeties, I don't want to disrespect safeties, but like in baseball, relief pitchers, they're not grown up as relief pitchers. They're starting pitchers that don't work out, and they try and change them into a role as a relief pitcher. That's what safeties are. There are a lot of cornerbacks that maybe they're not fast enough to compete in the college and NFL level, and they get moved to safety. So there's kind of a healthy market every year for these players that maybe they're not a 4.3 runner with Eamon Worry type speed, but they can project to useful players. And I think that's one of Mike McDonald's strengths and Carl Scott's strengths as well, is being able to find players to plug in. Because looking back at this last year, I forgot how many games Julian Love actually missed, and they plugged in Ty Okada, and they played great. So yeah, that's going to be a very difficult negotiation to have, and really pay him a lot of money. Boye Mafe is an interesting one. Are you hearing what I'm hearing? It seems like there's going to be a better market than what they're saying here. $7 million a year. I could almost see double that, like $14 million a year, 10, 12, 14. So
I think this, Curtis, from what I've been hearing from reliable sources, is that his market is more of what we thought it was going to be this past offseason, where we were like, when we saw Greg Rousseau sign his deal and going, okay, are we really going to pay Boy Mafe that? And we all kind of, I think, fell into a sense of, sleep, in the sense of, hey, he didn't perform that well. The numbers didn't show up. His market's going to be lower. It's very much the opposite. I think people look at him and go, well, maybe he just doesn't fit the Mike Macdonald system all that well. And, you look at what he did before that system. He was, an ascending pass rusher. He's still young. And I think he's going to your point, I think he's going to command a bigger market than people realize.
Yeah. And I think I want to say he's gone. I think he's not going to come back as a Seahawk this year. I've always felt that Mike Macdonald has sort of a absolute standard for the edge play, that it's not just the pass rushing and the speed and the bend. It's the size of the fight and the dog kind of mentality, like DeMarcus Lawrence and Derek Hall fit that perfectly. Even Chenna fits that very, very well. And Boy Mafe is just not quite in that level. And while he's not a terrible run defender, nobody will say that he's world class and he's excellent at setting the edge. And he's average, which that's great. That could be fine. But pass rush, I think a lot of teams are going to bet on the upside with him, and so he'll get a good contract.
I tend to agree. So here's the interesting one: is Reek Woolen? Do you think Reek is back, and do you think Seattle would pay the market that he potentially is going to command?
I don't think he's back. No, I don't think he's coming back. I think the Seahawks have given him every possibility and every chance to really mature and mold into a star. He's had a lot of good plays. He's had a lot of opportunities where he's shown that he's got supreme physical talent. But I think between Mike Macdonald's ability to kind of throw a corner over there and work him up, and the challenges, let's just say the weird penalties that could cost him a game, and the lapses, like week 1, he had 2 or 3 lapses that that did cost them the game. I just think it's better for everybody to move on. I don't think he's terrible. I don't think he's a bad player. But I think somebody is going to look at him and go, 6'4", runs a 4.2, and he's got 4 years of full experience in the NFL. That's just too good to pass up, and we'll give him more money than the Seahawks would even dream of. Now, he could go back and go out and see that there's no market and say, hey, let's try another year in Seattle. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Super Bowl taxes is alive and well. There's going to be a lot of teams that want to pluck some players off the roster.
I think it's that. And one comment here that gets brought up that I think is an interesting one, and it's from Brian here, goes, that recording of Mike Macdonald's response to the official after Reek got the taunting penalty told me a lot. Yeah, that was not a great moment. Because you could kind of tell, like, Mike I think is at a bit of a wit's end with that whole situation. So let's move over to the other counterpart that you and me discussed a little off air to start with, about how much he actually played this year, and that's Josh Jobe.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable deal. I'm going to guess that if it's that high at $9 million a year, there won't be like a huge guarantee on the money. It'll be okay. He's got to play one really good year, step into that role, and then we'll see what happens in year 2 with that and make a decision. But yeah, we were talking about that. Is 78% of snaps on defense. I was surprised how well he played. So there was some times he was not playing great. He was targeted by the quarterbacks, but I think he was very solid. I think he fits better than Woolen what they want to do on defense, and he has that. He does have the size of the dog, the fight in the dog, because he's not a big cornerback, but he doesn't play like it. So he has a very good quality that Seahawks would. I wouldn't be shocked if they locked him down, because last year he was restricted free agent, and before they had a chance to tender him, they were like, "Well, let's just sign him. Let's not mess around with this tender stuff. Let's just sign him." And they gave him a nice bonus for him. It was 300,000, I believe, and so they gave him some upfront money to kind of, really show their faith in him, because the year before he kind of came out of nowhere and was like very, very adequately protective of a fill-in spot. So the arrow might still be pointing up for him. So I think he could fit right across from Devin Witherspoon, and they'll look into some options in the draft, and we'll see what Nehemiah Pritchett does, if he's got some game to move into that spot. And then they'll probably scour, just like they did with Darion Kendrick, for 3 or 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
And he had 2 or 3 good games, and then they just sort of moved on. So
well, and I think that's the interesting thing, Curtis, is Seattle's done apparently a lot of talking at the combine to corners and to safeties. So I think they're aware of what potentially, again, because as John Schneider said, John Schneider was back in Seattle. He's already back at the VMAC. He's not even staying to watch the drills.
Right.
They really used it as hey, let's go meet the free agent market and the agents and whatnot and figure out where our guys roughly are thinking. And the fact that Seattle spent most of the time when they were there interviewing with players were DBs, and that kind of, I think, tells you a little bit of where Seattle may think that market's going to go for both of them. So
yeah,
the last guy on this list is Josh Jones, the swing tackle, who I honestly think, through playing for Charles Cross, may have played himself to a higher contract and a starting job somewhere else.
Yeah. I can see that there might be an opportunity for him to capitalize on, what was it, 5 games that he played. Yeah, there's definitely available, and especially, we're in a league now where offensive linemen are just absolutely premium, even if they're not as good as we think. So I think it'll be very fascinating to see where he ends up, because the Seahawks have a couple of players, Cable Do, Richmond, things like that. Do they have somebody that they're thinking about? Amari Kite, or thinking about putting into that swing tackle role? But at this point, it's one of those things, when you have a Super Bowl team coming off a win like that, do you want to leave it up to such a young player if Abe Lucas gets hurt again, or Charles Cross gets hurt again, or something like that? So yeah, there's definitely opportunity there for him to maybe get a good deal, but it might be like a $7 million a year, 2-year deal, and the second year is heavy and doesn't have a ton of guarantees, to kind of let the Seahawks reward him with some signing bonus money and see where he's at. But yeah, you kind of have to draw a line somewhere with how much you could spend.
You really do. So out of this group here for you, Curtis, who's number 1, who's number 2, and who's number 3 in priority?
Yeah, I wrote it down before I came on. So I have Shaheed number 1. I simply think they'll follow the model they've always followed, is trade for the guy. He's in a contract year. He loves Seahawks. They love him. So let's get him signed. And then the second is Josh Jobe. I think they don't want to go into the draft needing to pluck a cornerback and have him to be starting in the draft, or out of the draft as a rookie. And then Walker number 3, Bryant number 4, Woolen number 5, Mafe number 6. And the bottom 3, I don't know if they're going to come even sign. So yeah, I think Shaheed first, Jobe second, and then Walker if they can make an equitable arrangement for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the interesting thing there. So let's move on here, Curtis, and let's kind of talk a little bit about contract structure. So, everyone listens to the bonuses, the guarantees, the cap hits, all that kind of stuff, but a lot of it just kind of goes in one ear out the other, because no one really understands how it all works. So in this case, if the Seahawks are to sign JSN, how do you see the structure of that contract potentially working out for the Hawks?
Well, if they sign him this year, They'll probably want to put a void year or two on the end to kind of spread the money out. So what you're looking at with the top wide receivers, let me bring it up here, is in a range of a 2 or 3 year deal, a 3 or 4 year deal with a 35 to 40 million dollars range with that kind of a thing. But the guaranteed money, of course, is what you're really, really looking at. Fully guaranteed money is in the 60 to 70 million dollar range is what they're looking at. So there's some signing bonus money there. There's guarantees that go through the first year. So I'm a little hesitant about numbers. I mean, if we just did $35 million a year, just as a boilerplate number, almost Sam Darnold's contract, a 3-year, $105 million deal, maybe a $40 million signing bonus or so, and then have about another $25 million guaranteed on the deal. So it would blow out the 2026 year or 2027 year, the 5th year option. So it would be for 2027, 2028, 2029. So they'd have 3 years, and then his last rookie year would be part of the deal, and they would plus up a little bit to get some of the bonus money onto this year's contract, I would think.
Okay, and so like like when we're looking at this, the bonuses, the guarantees, the actual cap hit, what, in your opinion, what determines more? Like, what numbers out of those three should fans really be paying attention to when they see a contract come out and all the details eventually come out? What are the ones that you like, if you were to prioritize, hey, these numbers are the most important, which ones are you telling fans to look at?
Fully guaranteed at signing. That's a number one. So what'll happen is the agents get a hold of it, and Adam Schefter and Rappaport broker with them, and they literally will type the tweet for them basically out when it first goes out, and they'll say $170 million, $100 million guaranteed. It's not $100 million guaranteed. It's $60 million fully guaranteed, and then there's rolling guarantees, like guarantee for injury, and the Seahawks have those guarantee triggers that happen in the next year or so. So fully guaranteed at signing is the real big standard, because that's okay. You are writing this much money of a check for this guy. Nothing outside of that immediately matters. So that's really the big number there. The other one I always pay attention to is contract terms, as like the life of the contract. There was only a couple of 5-year contracts last year, and one of them was Will Fry's. So we already know how that went. So most players nowadays, the cap is just going up too fast. Like DK Metcalf, I pegged him to have a 4-year contract when he first signed, and he only wanted 3. So he was able to get back into the market, and the Steelers gave him a huge deal. So, by the time it comes around again, I mean, he may be in line for another huge contract. So it seems to be kind of a trend that's happening now, is a lot of these skill players want like a 3 or 4 year deal, maybe 3 years with a kind of a dummy year at the end. So, average per year is always kind of misleading. It's always very difficult to say, oh, this is, 3 years, $100 million is $33.33 million, a year. So like, for instance, we've got Jamar Chase, who's at $40 million a year, and you've got CeeDee Lamb, and you've got Justin Jefferson that are in the $34-35 million a year range. Well, the Jamar Chase has a lot of money on the end of the deal that's probably never going to be seen by him. So it is a little bit of an ego boost just to say, I'm the best, I'm the number one paid player in the NFL, sort of thing. And it's not real. So it's kind of hard to when fans say, oh, this much money per year, the Seahawks can't afford anyone else, they're spending too much money. It's really not true. It's something that you kind of need to dig into the into the numbers a little bit with that guaranteed money and see where there's the real numbers are factoring in. And I try to do write-ups of, I like this deal, I don't like this deal, that sort of thing, to see, kind of give fans a taste of where I think there's some opportunities for the Seahawks to, score a good deal and still get paid, get their player paid in a fine way. So, yeah, that's something that happens. When I was writing up DK Metcalf's first contract, there was, I think it was DeAndre Hopkins. His deal was $28 million a year, and he was like $6 million more than the highest paid receiver. Devontae Adams, then he eclipsed it, and he was $8 million more than the high. Well, the last 2 years of the deal were like $40 million a year. So it just doesn't add up. It's funny money, so to speak. So yeah, fully guaranteed, and then the length of the deal.
Okay. That's actually really helpful information, because even when I see some of these contracts come out, and like you said, these agents typing this, you're like, holy, Seattle really gave up that amount of money. And then you find out later on, it's like, well, not really. There's incentives they've got to hit. And this is really all they guaranteed was $40 million at the signing. That's really the minute that pen hits the paper is going into that player's bank account. So
yeah,
no, that was really insightful. Thank you for that, Curtis. And so, restructure or release and creating some cap flexibility. We, can talk about, obviously, in this particular thing, D-Law's pending potential retirement. I think that's kind of, on everyone's mind a little bit. Who are some other guys you could see potentially getting restructured in Seattle, or even getting released, that maybe some people don't really think about right now?
Well, I think the big question right now is about Uchenna Nwosu. He came off 2 very banged up years. I think he only played 5 games in 2 years. And in February, the Seahawks and him actually changed. I don't want to say broke their principles, but changed their principles a little bit. And that February money that gets guaranteed, they decided to kind of, hey, let's bump that date out, not guarantee it just yet, and let's see if we can work on something, because he had a really big number on the cap. And so subsequently, he has a big number this year on the cap. He's $20 million or so on the cap. Now, for my money, I think a lot of people are saying that he might be getting too old. He is too expensive. I think he played very, very well this year. I think he's a Mike McDonald edge. I think they probably want to extend him, maybe a 2-year deal, somewhere in the neighborhood of, $25, $30 million. Take some of the cap hit down this year and then move some of the money out, because he plays about 65% of the snaps, maybe 70, and he can get to 75 or so. He's only 29. He'll be 30 this fall. And he does what Mike McDonald needs. He's a very good run defender. And when he gets ahead of steam, he can bowl over a guy that outweighs him by 60 pounds. So I think Uchenna Nwosu is a good candidate. And especially if they have decided in their minds that Boye Mafe is gone, I think there's a reason, there's a real need to kind of, okay, let's lock this down. Kind of like Woolen leaving and, making sure Job is on the roster. Let's, the core of our team is defensive line. So let's not just mess around with this.
No, I agree. And I think Chen is a really interesting case, because I want him here. I think you can't lose 3 edges off this team. And, we're talking about Tank in that equation too. Like, if Boye Mafe goes and Tank retires, Chenna being, the last one standing kind of a way, like, that's kind of a scary thing, that now you're down to Chenna, Derek Hall, Connor O'Toole, and you're kind of going
Jared Ivey. Yeah.
Jared Ivey-ish, maybe. Like, now that really becomes a stress point for you in the draft and through free agency or via trade. I think this is where you restructure Chenna, you keep him here for 2 years, and that way you're only losing 10, and you have to obviously, fill that void. But I agree with you. I think Chenna is very much Mike McDonald edge. But this is where, for me, the 3 main groups that I'm worried about, or not worried about, but I think that need addressing this offseason: edge, corner, and running back. Those are, in my point right now, your 3 weakest spots, because linebacker, which we were all very worried about coming out of camp, is a strength right now. I think Drake Thomas gets re-signed. You got Chris Paul, you got Tyrese Knight, you've got Ernest Jones all dealt with. Patrick O'Connell is going to be a guy that you're going to be able to bring back. So that group's fine. Your safety room is going to be okay. You got Ty Okada, Julian Love, Nick Eamon-Warrior, and it looks to be a very deep draft for safeties.
Yeah.
You probably add another guy there. Now all of a sudden you look at edge and you go, D-tackle, we're pretty good in that. Jaron Reed, I think, will be here for another year. I think Leonard Williams will stick around. I think you'll see, obviously Byron Murphy. And again, you saw some other guys. Brandon Peely this year had a good year. And maybe, you can add somebody in there, but that edge group gets really thin really quick, losing Mafe and Tank Lawrence. And that's why I'm hoping Tank stays one more year.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely some thought processes to see if they want to approach Leonard Williams about an extension, because he's in the last year of his contract, and yes, he's older, but he's in fantastic shape. I was kind of down the stretch pounding the table for how come he's not getting Defensive Player of the Year votes. Not that he would win it, but he should be in the discussion. And so I thought, like a 2-year, $40 million extension, he gets this year's money all up front, as a Super Bowl bonus kind of a thing. And that lowers the cap hit. And it's not so much money that it'll wreck the cap. So if he continues playing as he is, even if he, take 10% off his snaps and give them to someone else, it's still worth it in my mind. So there's that. And then there's the big plum is Sam Darnold. They could pick up over $20 million by restructuring his contract this year. A lot of the stuff that they put in this year was a protection to see how he would do in 25 if they wanted to move on in 26. Well, I think the cat's out of the bag. They're going to keep him on the roster for 2026. So they can extend that out and then deal with an extension next year.
I think it's interesting because John Schneider, when he was on the Rich Eisen show, I believe it was, kind of alluded to he wants Sam Darnold to be in Seattle long term, which I think is something you, myself, Dan, Brandon King, we were all kind of talking about this at training camp, that yes, they drafted Jalen Milroe, but if Sam does well and this team does well, there's a chance Sam gets another 3-year deal and is here for 6 seasons in Seattle, potentially as the starting quarterback. And you look at it, he's 28. That puts him at 34. There's still good quality quarterbacks playing at the age of 34 in the NFL. Right. So if John Schneider's saying that now after 1 year, I think there's a safe bet to what you're talking about. Maybe they do something where it becomes hey, we're going to move some money around here, Sam. We're going to extend you 2 more years, give you some more money, but it also gives us a little bit more cap flexibility and gives us some, abilities there to do some things. So,
yeah. And they're more, I wrote a piece, I'll post it up on my Twitter again, but I wrote a piece. They're more open to buying on the credit card than they used to be. They used to not do that at all. But now void years and having, rolling bonuses and some different contract structures, they're more open to it than they were before. And if they're gonna really start mortgaging the future, this is the year to do it. You come off a Super Bowl, you don't have major needs, you're not rebuilding an entire position group, and sky's the limit. And you just know the other NFC West teams are going to be in an arms race. I mean, you just know the Rams are going to be, have 2 first-round picks. The Niners always figure a way to get some money or get some big players. And so the Seahawks need to tighten that grip on the division.
They definitely do. And that the Rams are going to do anything they can to try and make this a arms race again this offseason. Even the 49ers are going to look at it going, hey, if we had stayed healthy, we were right there. Like, Seattle's the first team, and it was, I think it was alluded to recently, the first team ever that was a number 1 seed that had to beat 3 12-win teams to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Which is something you never seen. So it'll be interesting. So last topic here, Curtis, before we get into, talking with the 12s that are in the chat here, building the window. So we talked about at the beginning of the show how this Seahawks window, they won it a year earlier than most of us anticipated them being in the Super Bowl. With these contracts for JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Devin Witherspoon, if they move money for Sam Darnold, they just signed Charles Cross and Abe Lucas. How does the structure of any free agents or any of these upcoming contracts really affect the Super Bowl window?
Well, it depends on how they go. I mean, if they're looking at going out and getting a Max Crosby this year, if they're really trying to make that happen, his cap hit is like 32 million and change. So, they'll restructure that obviously and make sure that that's compliant for this year. So it really depends on where they think they are in the stream of time and what they can do in the next couple of years. So the talent they have that has not yet hit their ceiling is considerable. So Torrey Horton, Nicky Manwari, Drake Thomas has turned out to be a great find. Even that was from the Pete Carroll days. So there's opportunities there to get guys on contracts that are rookie contracts or not very expensive. So there's opportunities there when you're making money on these small contracts to really dip in and go big at this point. The Weatherspoon and JSN contracts are not going to be small. That's definitely going to be a consideration, obviously. I do feel like even though Seahawks have lots of options, they're going to extend them eventually. So if they want to do the 5th-year option and then work out that money, they can make that work just like they did with Charles Cross. Hit the 5th year in May and then work out an extension in the fall. They might want to do that, but they really won't get ugly until 2028, 2029. And by then, some of the Leonard Williams contracts will be gone. Chenna Nwosu probably won't be around. Dexter Lawrence will be gone, that sort of thing. And so it's really a rolling issue that you have to deal with. And I think they're set up very well to handle it. So I don't want to use the D word Dynasty, but they're in a position to keep improving. I mean, we all see things that they can improve. I think Darnold and Rashid Shaheed, I think he will be back, didn't quite have their timing down this year. I think a full off season of just going out in the yard and throwing the ball around and Darnold realizing how fast he is could provide a whole other element to this offense. Elijah Arroyo, Nicky Manwari, really getting, flexing his strength. I mean, he was so good this year, but remember, he started out the year hurt and he missed some games. So, he's still got a chance to play very well. So I think there's still an upwards arrow. And this isn't like a New Orleans Saints team where, okay, we had the Super Bowl party and now Monday morning oh man, we're in debt $85 million. What do we do now? Sort of a thing. It's not like that. They're in a very good spot.
Yeah, that's the thing I think about this. This team I feel is almost set up better to handle a dynasty opportunity than the predecessor of the Legion of Boom era was in a salary cap sense and way of structure than they were back then.
Yeah.
They paid a lot of guys, right? They paid Sherman, they paid, Chancellor, they paid Russell Wilson. There was a lot of spending then to keep that core nucleus together because a lot of their abilities were reached near the late part of their rookie deals in a lot of ways, right? This team's done it early. So now you might get another year of exactly that, having these guys on cheap deals before. Really, if you think about 2027, that's when really the interesting cap maneuvering, I think, is going to come into play, is that 2027 offseason.
Yeah. And like for instance, I wrote down some of the free agent questions they have this year. So Ty Okada is an exclusive rights free agent. So that's like $1 million. It won't even hit the cap hardly this year because there's already players making $800,000. George Holani is $1 million. Restricted free agents, they've got Chris Stoll, the long snapper. They'll probably want to reward him with a contract. but that's the highest paid long snapper is $1.6 million. So this isn't like a killer deal or anything. Drake Thomas is a restricted free agent. If they want to tender him, that's $3.5 million, but they'll probably just sign him to an extension, or at least do what they did with Josh Jobe and just, we don't want to deal with the tender. Let's just give you a contract now. And then there's like Brandon Peely. He's a restricted free agent, but they may just say, hey, here's $1.5 million. So, come back and play with us this year. So they've got a lot of talent that's not expensive in the least. And the draft in 2025 and 2024 is really paying off. And I know it was just one game, but Riley Mills, if he can do it, I mean, he doesn't have to be the next Zach Allen or anything in the middle, but if he can come in once or twice a game and just blow up a pocket, that's the extraordinary value, even with a guy that's banged up and missed a year.
It was really funny when I saw that Riley Mills play happen, because the 98 and the 99 look so close when you look at them on it. I thought for a second it was JJ Watt, like just showed up and took one rep in Seattle and completely wrecked Drake May and that offensive guard there in Wilson. And I was like,
the game.
Did we just sneak JJ Watt into the game for one play here? Like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it'll be, and you got to think, you look at this draft class, Elijah Arroyo, to your point, Elijah Arroyo hasn't really hit his, capabilities yet. Torrey Horton had 6 touchdowns, and then we lost him for the entirety of the back half of the season. Like, there still are contributions to be had from this draft class. And I think one of the biggest key factors for Seattle in this offseason, and really for the next 2, in my opinion, your offensive line could potentially come back 2-3 years in a row now. So they're coming back this year, and they could come back the year after because they're all young enough.
Yeah.
3 of them are under contract for at least the next 3 years. Sundell, I don't think, is going to demand a huge market when his opportunity comes. And Anthony Bradford, I don't think you could re-sign Anthony Bradford this offseason, or extend him, I should say, and add a year to his deal potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And you're setting yourself up where it's like, hey, we're not paying an arm and a leg for our offensive line yet.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of opportunities to work this very well. And one of the things I always note, when they draft a player that's injured and he misses most of the year, his contract runs out on him as a restricted free agent, not an unrestricted free agent. So like Riley Mills, at the end of his contract, let's see, 26, 27, 28, 29. So 29, 2030, basically, they have team control of him. So if he's rocking and rolling like we hope he will be, through 2030, they'll have a reasonable contract on him, which is just outstanding. So there's all kinds of things that they can do to make this work. And as much as it's been talked about not being a good draft class this year, if John Schneider can do what he did the last 2 years and get 3 or 4 players out of this draft, even if they're undrafted free agent types that can, find a role on this team, that'll just keep the wagon train going, and they'll be able to have a lot of money to spend on premium talent or extend the talent they have.
Absolutely. So, Curtis, I appreciate all the breakdown that you just did for us on the cap stuff and what Seattle's kind of off-season road path is with this salary cap and what the extensions could look like and such. But we've got the 12s in the chat, and they've been posting some great comments in there and such, and we've got some great super chats to get to. So let's spend a few minutes doing that while we got you on the show.
Sure.
We got DBot11 comes in with, can you please explain how signing bonus versus salary affects the cap? Can you also explain how extending someone now with 2 years left on a contract would work APY-wise?
Yeah. So the first part of the question is fairly simple, DBot. So say a 4-year contract, they give them a $40 million signing bonus, 10 million per year hits the cap. So it's real simple, and it's money that they put into an account in escrow. They pay out to the player over a schedule, but what happens is when they trade that player, like in year 3, they have $20 million of dead money that hits. And so that's why you see all this talk about dead money that hits. The salary up for that player goes with them to another team, but the dead money stays. So the easiest way to think of that, D-Bot, is who's writing the check. So if the new team is writing a check for the salary, then that's on their salary cap. But if we're talking about like a signing bonus that was given the minute he signed his contract, that's with his original team. And then can you also explain how extending someone with 2 years left on the contract would work APY wise? Yeah, it could work. It will work easily. The Seahawks have a standing principle not to extend players with 2 years left on their contracts, so it doesn't happen very often. But usually what they do is they'll take their current salary and take it all the way down to the league minimum. So if a player's making $20 million on salary in a year, they'll take it down to about 1.5 million or 2 million or so. So they have a low salary, and then they'll put that money into the signing bonus so they can prorate it and spread it out, just like we talked about over the years. And so it makes the cap work a little bit easier for them. That's why when you go to OTC's website and you hit the extension button, you'll see that, okay, we can save $20 million on this extension or whatever, because that's what they're doing. They're restructuring the salary. They're giving the money up front to the player, and then they're able to stretch it out over the life of the contract to make it a little bit more palatable.
So we got one in here from Albert Butler. Goes, anyone else want Curtis to paint himself blue and show up to a Seahawks game as Seahawks Thanos?
Yeah, my muscles aren't quite there. So yeah.
But Curtis, you'd have an infinity gauntlet. You would have the salary cap infinity gauntlet. I think it would work.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's not something everybody has. So yeah, that is something. So there is a guy that dresses up like the Batman Joker, the Chris Nolan Joker.
Yeah,
and he's got a Seahawks cap, and man, he's awesome. He's got his outfit all together or so. So
I think that was a really cool thing this year is you saw more of those fans coming back. Like you saw more of the true fans coming back to the games, which is awesome. It didn't feel as corporate as it has in the past, which is something I think that's really key for this team. And I think part of it is I think people started to believe again. I think there was a period there where a lot of people just were tired of the same old thing and being in purgatory. And now we know that we're not there anymore. And it'll be crazy next year in Lumen. Like, man, I got a feeling that place is going to register some more earthquakes next season. But we got one from Johnny here. Goes, Bryce, hat is fire. Yes, this is the hat that I have no idea where my wife found it. I think Amy responded in the chat to it, our moderator there, Amy Holmes, that I don't pick any of my hats. None of the hats that you guys see me wear are picked by me. They are all picked out by my wife. She is the hat queen. She knows exactly the hats to get, and this so far has been the biggest hit out of most of them. I think this and maybe my shark tooth hat that I got, a while back is the one, but I haven't been able to find this one. I can't find it on any website anywhere. I have no idea where she got it.
Wow.
So it's one that numerous fans have asked me for, and once I do find it, I will make sure I put a link on the YouTube page of where you guys can go and find it. But I have no idea where she found it. So, but thank you, Johnny. Appreciate that. We got a super chat in here from D-Bot. Go $5. Thank you, D-Bot. Goes, how do the finances work if we give JSN a 3-year extension for $41 million per year on the 3 new years? Can we average that out over the next 5 total years?
So they can only work with what the contract has. So a 3-year deal as far as salary goes, whatever the salary is, it's on those 3 years. But they can add void years. So if you go and look at Sam Darnold's contract on overthecap.com, you'll see that he's got his 3 years, and then they've got 2 more years that are called void years, and it allows them to spread out the bonus money for 2 more years. So, for instance, if they give, let's just say they give JSN a $50 million bonus on that 3-year contract, they can make that a $10 million per year cap hit, And the bottom 2 years aren't real years, they're just void years, and they're 10 million and 10 million right there. So it does allow them to kind of push the cap hit out. And then the other thing is, it's when the cap goes up, the value of that $10 million actually goes down. So it's actually it's like an interest-free loan. So you're actually gaining money in a way if you spread the money out a little bit. So, and my goodness, the cap is not going to go down anytime soon. The gambling revenues kicking in, the international revenues kicking in. Yeah.
Look how many international games they have this year. And if the Seahawks end up in one of those, whether it's in London or wherever, it's going to be, I think, even higher. So it'll be interesting to see how much higher the cap goes next offseason. But thank you for the donation there, D-Bot. We've got another donation here from Hulk Smash, $5. Thank you, Hulk Smash. Running back is an easy position to fill. K9 is special, though. I really feel he can be a top 5 back. How much would you guys be willing to pay him? Go Hawks. I'll start here, Curtis. I would be willing to pay Ken Walker $10 million a season. That would be my max on Ken Walker for a 3-year deal. So 30 million total.
Yeah. So it's like Kyron Williams, like I said, is kind of a nice little standard. He got a 3-year, 33 million, 15 million immediately guaranteed. So and like we said, the running back market is just not very strong. If there's somebody out there that really wants to pay Ken Walker the money, 13, 14, 15 million a year, good for him. I can't get mad with him for that. That's life-changing money for the rest of his life. So, but I'm kind of in your ballpark. Bryce is, a 3-year deal, 30 million, 33 million, maybe a little bit more guaranteed money just to give you a cherry on top for winning the Super Bowl and the MVP and all that. But they really had to kind of baby him this year throughout camp and throughout the preseason to make sure he was going to be healthy. So if they have to make a determination with their medical staff, is this going to be sustainable for him? Because I think that's the greatest factor that we don't really know about a player is, okay, all of our scans and all of our tests, we have 4 years of data on this guy. Is there something coming down the road that we need to worry about, or potentially coming down the road?
Well, I think this is the other interesting fact. When you look at some of these running backs in that ballpark, a Kyron Williams, and the guys that are above, a lot of them aren't in a very 50-50 timeshare. Like even Kyron Williams is in a timeshare. It's more of a 65-35 with Blake Corum. And when you look at what K9 was this year, until Charbonnet got hurt, it was really a 50-50 split. There were games where we're all sitting there going, why isn't K9 getting the ball more? Or,
right.
No, and so when you're going to pay the money that, we're talking about to a guy, and if you're going to go up in that range, I expect a team that walks in and says, hey, we're going to pay you $12.5 million per year, Ken Walker. They're saying we're going to give you 80% of the snaps. And to your point, can his body handle it really is the question. So it's going to be an interesting ongoing thing this offseason. So we'll have to look at it. But thank you for the super chat there, Hulk Smash. We've got Mookie Alexander, the editor from Field Goals and my boss over there. And Mookie, it's always great to have you in the chat. He goes, if you keep Job but not Reek, you have to draft another corner because I'd much rather keep Spoon primarily in the slot. I think it's an interesting conversation to have because Spoon played well down the stretch on the outside. They have Nick Evenworry in the slot, but then in the Super Bowl, where did we see Spoon play a lot of? He played quite a fair amount in the slot on those blitz packages. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I think definitely I agree with Mookie. You got to draft a corner if you don't bring back Reek.
I think there's an element of flexibility that Mike McDonald craves to be able to, okay, who's going to be blitzing? Is it Eamon Is it going to be Spoon? Is it going to be Ernest Jones? And you kind of lose some of that if Witherspoon is always on the outside. That corner blitz from the outside can work, but it's just not quite the same. You take off a little bit of his effectiveness if you constantly put him on the outside.
I agree. I still think down the stretch when he played outside, he played truly as a top 5 outside corner, which I think it's something that, in a lot of ways is what you were hoping Spoon was when you drafted him. So it shows he can do it. But thank you for the comment there, Mookie. We got Albert Butler back in here with a 12 and 12 donation. I always love these. They're great. Curtis, have you filed your taxes yet?
No, I haven't. I've been too busy enjoying a Super Bowl win. I went down to California for a few days, just relaxed, and I'll get a little money back, but I'm not in a hurry. So yeah,
Fair enough.
Not enough to make a difference.
Fair enough. And we got another one here from Mookie. Goes, what fans should realize is McDonald's scheme is great, but you still need talent and quick learners. If it was truly plug and play, then Baker and Dotson would never have been dumped mid-season. And I think what this is talking about is how we were talking about how you need to add players back. We can't just add anybody. They have to really fit, and they have to have talent.
Yeah, yeah. And Rob Staten has a great article on the Seahawks draft log about if DeMarcus Lawrence retires, that's going to really up the ante for us to go get maybe Crosby or another, real veteran edge, because it's very possible that he was our best defensive lineman this year. He had more pressures than everybody. He had sacks, and he was a monster.
So this is actually an interesting thing I want to kind of bring up to this point a little bit about what Mookie, but Lindsay Rhodes, who works with Summer Sports now and is formerly of NFL Network, some of the nuggets from Combine for her was that teams are trying to figure out Mike McDonald's, defense and how they can replicate it and everything that he does. The only problem they all realize, and it's true, is it's Mike McDonald. Like, you can't you can schematically try and do it, but the way he calls things, the way he sees things and does things, you can't replicate. Look at Zachary Orr tried to do it in Baltimore. He had a Kyle Hamilton, and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. He's kind of becoming, I don't know if this is sacrilege, but becoming a Sean McVay of the defense. Everybody wants a Sean McVay. Everybody wants a Sean McVay, but you can't just go get one. Like just saying, oh, I just go get a franchise quarterback. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
What are you talking, Curtis? We just went and got a franchise quarterback this offseason. What are you talking about?
Did.
It's so easy. But it takes two to tango. It takes a franchise to completely drop the ball on that and let him walk out the door after he puts up 14 wins and pivot to a kid that was unproven at that coming out really from college. So,
well, speaking of that, they're talking about Malik Willis maybe getting $30 million a year in the free agent market.
Gosh.
That's $3 million less than Sam Darnold, and Malik Willis is 2 years younger than Sam Darnold. That's it. And we've got Sam Darnold on $33 million and sporting a Super Bowl ring.
This is very, very true. And if you
Dak
look at
Prescott
it,
is making $60 million a year. That's two Sam Darnolds, or Sam Darnold and Leonard Williams together. Insane.
It's interesting. We got one here from It's Savage. Seattle does not need to draft a QB this year. I totally agree. I don't think they were even considering it to begin with. But yeah, I don't really like this quarterback class, to be brutally honest with you anyways, Curtis. I think it's a good thing they did take Milroe last year just to hedge against it.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I'd say to that is just don't put John Schneider in a box. If there's somebody that he likes, he's going to take him.
True.
Yeah. So I'm really disappointed that Drew Aller has gone so far south. I thought he was going to be he would be a
guy I'd take a swing on. If, to your point, he's got a lot of the things John Schneider likes. And if some team, says, hey, we're going to give you a second or third round pick for Jalen Milroe, and you can get Drew Aller in the 6th or 5th round or 7th round, like maybe you take that swing and see if it's an opportunity. Who knows? I don't think they will, but you never know. Like you said, don't put John into a box there. But we got Town Biz in here. Goes, am I the only one who forgets what Curtis says about the salary cap 20 minutes after he's done? Man, this guy is smart. Great show as always, boys.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for that, Town
Biz. Appreciate it. That's why I write articles Town
Yeah,
Biz.
go read Curtis's articles on Seahawks Draft Blog.
Yeah, this is stuff that is probably just as good in written form, so you can comprehend it and go back and read it more than once.
Agreed. So we've got another one here from Albert. Goes, Coots needs a Z in it. Now, Albert, I'm going to ask you, is that because it sounds very much like Oots?
Yeah.
You just add a C to it. I think that's where you're going for. I'd be okay with it, to be honest. But see, the problem is up in Canada, it's not Z, it's Z.
Yeah.
So now it's not going to sound the same at all. I'd have to completely move down to Seattle, which I'm not always opposed to. I'd definitely do that in a
Well, there's
heartbeat.
another player that we didn't get a full look at this year.
Yeah, and
Rob
that's a player I'm going to be interested in to see what his medical comes out with, because neck injuries for fullbacks are always a scary thing.
Yeah. John L. Williams wore that donut on his uniform for his entire career.
And I'm pretty sure Max Strong even wore a bit of a rolled up one underneath a little bit in his. So
yeah.
We got Josh in here. Goes, Danny Dennis Sutton and Anthony Hill are two other guys I'd love the Hawks to draft. I did like Dennis Sutton at Mobile. I was at Senior Bowl. He was one of the edges along with Zion Young and Derek Moore, who stood out to me like crazy. The other guy I'll throw out there is Gabe Jackas from Illinois, is another guy that I really like as a Seahawk fit. He's a guy to pay attention to throughout this draft process as well. And Josh here with a $5 donation. Thank you, Josh. Goes, what players that didn't play much in 2025 can make an impact in 2026? I think Ivy and Cable Do are contenders. What are your thoughts, Curtis?
Ugh. Yeah. Hard to say at this point. I think all the guys that we talked about that were injured, Elijah Arroyo, Oos, Horton, they're all on the list. I don't know where they're going to put Jared Ivey. I could kind of see him as not a Boye Mafe, but more of a Derek Hall type player. Like, he won't get a ton of sacks, but he'll be able to hold the edge and then move inside on pass rush downs. And let's be honest, they put him on the roster and had him on the roster all year long. They basically did the thing where they just kept him on the roster and paid him a full salary instead of putting him on the practice squad. So they must like him. There must be something that they like in there, and maybe it's something that McDonald can coach up. I do like Ivy. I've always kind of liked him and had one eye out for him, and I was really pleased when they signed him as a undrafted free agent.
So one guy I'm going to throw that I think could be interesting in the receiver room battle this coming up this offseason is Ricky White. He's a guy, again, I think that people forgot about because he kind of got stashed on the practice squad. I think he's a guy that could play into that fifth receiver spot, depending on what they do with Derek Young and Jake Bobo. So he's a guy I'd be interested in. The other one, I'm still high on a bit. There's two. I think a guy that we didn't see play much at all, I should say, Jacardier Wright could really factor into that running back competition at the bottom half of that third running back spot, especially with the Charbonnet injury. And depending on what happens with Kenneth Walker, like, again, this Seattle running back room could look very different the start of the season next year. So that's another guy for me that I'm interested in. But I think Cable Do and Ivy are some serious contenders there as well, Josh.
Wasn't Ricky Wright the guy that he missed most of his last year of college with injury? Or am I thinking of another receiver?
No, Torrey Horton missed most of his last year of college.
That must be Torrey Horton, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So outside of that, though, Curtis, I think we're going to call it a night unless there's any other super chats that pop in here. But with that being said, Curtis, why don't you let the viewers know where they can find more of your work and what you got kind of coming up here over the offseason?
So my Twitter handle's right there, Curtis at Curtis93969. Seahawks draft blog. Rob is basically tirelessly posting about the combine. He'll put everything together after that, and I guarantee you in the next few days we'll have some more things to talk about between new contracts, trades, things of that nature. So there'll be a lot there, and at some point I usually do an annual big cap piece about what they can do or what they should do this offseason. and I'm just trying to kind of tumble it around in my head and format it properly a little bit. So there will be something coming down the road for that, and then a review of kind of where they are midsummer, and then as we get into the fall, we'll look back at it again. But I did want to say if there's a surprise extension coming, I'd say Derek Hall this fall. He's going in the last year of his deal, and they really like him. He's kind of what they don't have in Boye Mafe. So I don't know how much money he'll get, but once they get all the other things worked out, they'll probably go to work on a Derek Hall extension this fall and announce it November, December.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised about the Derek Hall extension either. I think he's a guy, considering what he did in the Super Bowl, he had 2 sacks. He was kind of a game wrecker in the Super Bowl along with the rest of that defensive front there for Seattle. But over here on the Hawks side, everybody, I will be back to producing more content more regularly, so you guys can expect that to show up. Next week we've got Greg Bell stopping by the show. We'll have a live show with Jeff Simmons of the Real Hawk Talk show coming on, and Jeff's going to talk about his Super Bowl experience as well as the combine and what he's been hearing, and it's kind of going to be like a pre-free agency show. And Seahawks Syndicate will be back next Thursday night at 5:00 with myself, Brandon Kane, Dan Viens, and Mookie Alexander. And we also will be starting our draft coverage and draft series next week as well. So keep a lookout for that. So if you haven't, head on over, like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that notification. Doesn't cost you a thing. It helps the show get out to more people, allows me to get good guests like Curtis back on the show throughout the offseason and during the regular season. So with that, I'll also put this up in the corner. That QR code will lead you to all things the Hawks Eye. So head over there, check that QR code out. It'll allow you to message me on Twitter, Instagram, follow all the field goal stuff as well. And make sure you guys go over to Field Goals and check out all the articles there, along with Curtis's work and Rob Staten's on Seahawks Draft Blog. So for myself, for Curtis, as always, stay loud, be proud, and go Hawks. Have a good night, everybody.